The views and opinions expressed by the guest author or speaker during this live session are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Reader's Magnet. The content shared is for informational purposes only and does not constitute endorsement or promotion of any particular belief, ideology, or product.
Hello, authors, book lovers, and storytellers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Reader's Magnet featured author interview, where we dive deep into the world of creativity and inspiration. And once again, it's me, Rob Lambeth, and I'm your host for today. And our guest for today is the author of the book, Born Blind, The Traumas and the Triumphs. So please help me welcome David Block. So, David, how are we doing today?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to stay calm as usual. Yeah, I'm okay.
We'd love to hear that. And David, welcome to the Hive. And for all of our viewers, though, as you can see on the book on the screen right now is the book Born Blind. That's the cover you'll be seeing. And if you want to grab a copy, it's available, or we'll be adding a link on the comments down below. But furthermore, and what else is, again, David, there are a lot of articles talking about you as especially with the website, The Blind Filmmaker. But to all of our viewers who want to know more about you, can you please give us a brief background of who is the David Block?
Okay, David Block. Okay, I am legally blind. I've been that way since birth due to congenital cataracts. I'm allegedly on the autism spectrum. I have to get an official diagnosis, but those are too expensive. But besides that, though, I've done a lot with my life. To date, I've made 9 documentaries, many of which deal with people with disabilities, some which won awards, and I'm working on the 10th film right now. And I've written 2 books. I have a master's degree in journalism from Temple University, 2017, and I earned my undergraduate degree at Bard College in Annandale, New York, in May 1988. So those are just a few of the points that my legacy. I have no children. I'm not married, but that's that's part of it right there.
Okay. Well, David, talking more about here, though, again, talking about you are legally blind, and now you are an author as well, creating documentaries, which is such a feat that a lot of people can look up to. But talking more about your book, can you please tell us more on what this book is about? What is Born Blind, The Traumas and Triumphs about?
Okay. These are 5 short stories. One of them is autobiographical, the Philippine story. My father, me and sister Josephina. That one's 100% true. I wrote as true. The other 4 are based on people I knew or people I interviewed. I wrote some of those stories in the 80s and 90s. Some were disturbing incidences happened that caused me to write that fiction. When I hired a proofreader, Gloria Hotchman, to proofread my work, I left it up to her. So those were the 5 stories she picked, and these are the 5 best ones. Publish these, self-publish those. I don't know if that answers your question. So these are based on blindness disturbances, things that have happened or things that I saw happen as a reporter, or some basically working with me as a reporter, or some people I knew, that type of thing.
Oh, okay. And I love that. And, talking more about, because we're talking about real lives, real stories here when it comes with Born Blind, your book. But so who inspired you to start writing this book then?
Well, I wrote those stories. Those were the stories of all the stories I wrote that people thought were my best ones. I mean, I was writing when I was at Bard College. I wanted to be a fiction writer, but my fiction was not very good. Was not good enough to do fiction writing as a senior project. So I ended up being a history major. But I still, it's so strange. I got A- when I took fiction writing workshop. They said it wasn't because of my stories. It was because of my effort and really giving 100% for those 2 semesters. I mean, giving it all. But I mean, some of those stories just weren't so good. Like in 1997, I met this published author. I don't know what the laws are of saying her name, but she was a well-published author. She read one of my stories and urged me to read this book, The Art of Fiction by John Gardner, before I revised any of my stories, because she said some of them needed work, but they had potential. I've reminded her of what happened. She barely knew me. When my book got published in 2023, I found out where she lived. I'll say her name. I'm not afraid. Rachel Simon. She's actually a good person. She actually helped me. Rachel Simon. I'm not smearing her in any way. And in fact, she made a donation to my last project I was working on. So, yeah. So she helped me. Sometimes tough love is good love sometimes, I guess.
Love that. And, talking about people who helped you and people who assisted you. And again, with all the support and love that you'd received, though. But again, talking more about this book and talking more about the stories that you had written within this book. What was your hardest scene to write, and why was it the hardest then?
Oh, sure. Story number 4, I'm Not a Bad Person. That's told in the first person by an unnamed narrator. It's based on 2 vile people I knew when I went to a special ed school. It used to be called the Vanguard School. I went to the middle school in Paoli for 2.5 years, into the high school in Haverford, PA for 1.5 years. I think that the name changed of that school. I thank God I left that school, went to Lower Marion High School. But in that school, a lot of people there had learning disabilities, social disabilities, and there were 2 people I saw who got beat up all the time. All the time. Thank God I was in their gym classes. Otherwise, I would have gotten it too. I never picked on them. I never made fun of them. I was just glad to have been left alone. And like sometimes when they would get beaten up, the adults sometimes would be more disgusted with the victims than they were with the bullies. Like, okay, I'll mention the name of one of the victims. Okay, his name was his first name was Brian. Like one day in gym class, this guy was beating up Brian. So our teacher said, "Look," we said, "Ricio, stop doing that." Brian, stop screaming. You sound like a little girl. Or like one day on the bus they were hitting him, and the gym teacher goes, "Is that necessary? We don't have a headache now. We don't want to hear him screaming. Now leave him alone." That type of thing. It's like disgust. There was another guy who was beaten up, had trouble talking. He fell off a cliff when he was 6 years old, and he was barely able to speak afterwards. He was 100% normal. After the accident, he became disabled, and he went to that special ed school. He was beaten up a lot, and had he not rode the bus with me, I might have been a target more. I mean, I got in the fights on the bus, but I think I might have had more had he not been there. I mean, I was never friendly with those people or unfriendly. I didn't like most of the people there at Vanguard. But that's who those stories were based. It was more based on the grown-ups' reaction. Now, here's the part that was so hard to write. When I wrote I'm Not a Bad Person in 1987, the very first time I wrote it, I did not give a reason why he was not a bad person. I never did, because I'd read a lot of William Faulkner, like The Sound of the Fury, and some of his characters never had explanations on why they did bad things. All my fiction writing teachers said, well, that's because Faulkner was Faulkner. But there was a time Faulkner was a rejected Faulkner 200 times. But anyway, so the hardest thing to write was my proofreader insisted that I'm not a bad person. I find something to make that narrator sympathetic. He was meant to be 100% hateful. But in that story, I'm not a bad person. There's something about him that may not make you feel sorry for him or like him, but this bully, you begin to understand him more. You understand him a lot more. And at the end, you kind of feel for him a little bit. That was the hardest part to write, because always my content was, people would say, why is she not a bad person? I'm like, I don't have to tell you why. After reading authors like Faulkner or Joyce or other people like that, they never explained why. And I thought, why should I have to? Difference, they had an agent, they were published, and they were well known. But I listened to the proofreader. That what made me do it was I listened to the proofreader. I put everything in her hands because I was tired of my stories being mediocre. She helped me make them better. I know I answered a long-winded answer, maybe more than what you expected. I hope I wasn't talking too fast, though. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Hey, don't worry. It was loud and clear, though. We got the message across, though. You're not speaking too fast here, David. No need to worry about that.
Because I was interviewed for a film I showed recently, and I was speaking too fast. I heard the interview afterwards. Go ahead.
Okay. But David, coming back, because again, talking more about books, talking more about stories, and we do know that you draw inspiration from real people. But do you also add entirely fictional characters when you create these stories? Or
I've written some fiction. I mean, some fiction not based on these characters. They were never published. I could do something more with them. Maybe, I mean, I used to think fiction writing was my thing, but I guess not. I'm more of a journalist. But those were the best stories I wrote. I mean, I have written some fiction. I wrote stories because I used to be scared to death of houseflies because I couldn't see them. And the buzzing was really loud, and I got them confused with bees. I wrote a story about them having their own world, their own society, that type of thing, you know. And they were the two-legged monsters living off of living off of us. If they wanted to go out to the movie, if they wanted to go out to dinner, they'd just go into a restaurant, see what the customers were eating, and all that type of stuff. Jealousy and all that. I wrote that story. I mean, I know it's unbelievable, but I wrote that. When I took this one fiction writing class, I was allowed to write stuff that were less believable. Like, that was a great semester. His name was Peter Sorian. That was my teacher, the late Peter Sorian. He had a few novels published. I mean, one time for him, I wrote a story about a guy who wakes up, everything bad happens to him. That was based on the trial. Anyway, I don't want to go on rambling, but you get the idea.
Yeah, don't worry. I got it loud and clear here. And also, David, because again, talking more about your background as you being a journalist and you working on documentaries as well. And again, to all of our people, by the way, we're including some links, as you can see on the banner, though. I would highly suggest for you to visit those links that we're posting right now. But before you visit and before you leave us here during this interview, I just wanted you to check this out. So, David, is there anything else that people will be expecting from you? Like maybe a sneak peek into any upcoming projects or ideas that you're currently working on right now?
I'm currently working on a documentary about the Get Cafe in Narberth, Pennsylvania. It's a cafe that hires a lot of people with disabilities to work there. I work there myself. I'm visually impaired. Some of the people have learning disabilities or other types of disabilities. Mine is visual and allegedly autism and a lot of anxiety, which is not alleged. I'm making a film about that. That film kind of happened unexpectedly. You see, after I made 9 documentaries, there were some people I met who wanted to make a documentary about me, how a half-blind guy makes documentaries. And they said, the only way we can make this film is if you have to be working on a new documentary. So since I was already working at the Get Cafe twice a week, they said I picked that as a topic. I might not have picked it as a topic had they not been making that film about me, because I was so burned out from making How Sweet the Sound and from Born Blind getting published. We both happened at the same time in 2023. And so that's what I'm working on right now. I mean, I might write a book about James Joyce, How to Read Ulysses. I mean, that's not the first time I wrote a book about that. I once wrote a book on the 613 mitzvot. I'm just showing it here. We're not talking about that book here. It took 11 years to write that book. But anyway, it's another story. So I might be working on that, and I might be writing some other short stories. I may have to hire a different proofreader to go over 5 additional short stories of mine. I may want to get 5 more published, and I may try to get some of those other ones published, like the Fly story, since I said that out loud. But unless somebody steals that idea now, you never know.
Well,
because people will take anything,
Hey, we'll never know that. And again, but it comes with all of the works that you're working on, David. And thank you much for very much sharing that with us. And again, to all of our viewers, though, I would highly suggest, though, try to visit David Block's website. That's www.theblindfilmmaker.com is what you're seeing that's popping on your screen. And I can tell you, though, I've been watching a couple of videos, especially How Sweet the Sound, a story about John Sutton, a blind African-American that sang at a suburban station. You heard stories about him. I would highly suggest for you to check it out, go for it, and see more about his book. Also, go on.
There's one thing I got to say about John Sutton. My 3rd story in Born Blind is called You Can't Do Nothing. It's about John Sutton, but I changed the name. It's more of the angry side of John Sutton that most people did not see or know. When I was making the film, I was told to leave most of that stuff out. I mean, I did mention in the film that it wasn't mentioned in the film that his mother blinded him, but he was a real angry person based on things that happened to him. And You Can't Do Nothing. That's my 3rd story in Born Blind. Like, if you watch my film, How Sweet the Sound, I urge you to read You Can't Do Nothing. That's story number 3 in Born Blind.
Love that. So again, as what we said, let me just repeat that, though. You Can't Do Nothing. Also check that out. The other side of the story of John Sutton. And again, try to check out a film, though. How Sweet the Sound is available on The Blind Filmmaker. And he's also, David does not have just one documentary, which is How Sweet the Sound. He also has award-winning also documentaries that he would love to share here, which we got here, Abandoned Heroes. And David, can you show us Abandoned Heroes here on the screen?
It's endorsed. Yeah, these are the words. Can the people see it? Because I can't see well. And by the way, if you look really closely, Ken Burns endorsed that film here. He endorsed it, the PBS producer. It took me a year to get him to endorse it. I bugged this publicist, Chris Darling, to no end. It took me 9 years and 10 months to make this film, and I was never a veteran. I never served, nor did any members of my family.
Love that. And he also has one more, which is Dancing Outside a Box. Can you show us that?
I've made 2 documentaries about wheelchair dancing. Here's the one called Dancing Outside the Box. This won a number of film festival awards. And no, I do not dance. I don't watch dancing. I have 2 left. I know it. I don't need a Simon Cowell to tell me that I can't dance. I know the truth. And that's just the honest truth. I can make films, though, but those are some of the awards it's won. I never thought I'd be winning awards. And I also made a horse film that won awards. Those are of the 9 documentaries I've made, those are my 3 best. Those ones have covers. They have a lot of awards. That's a gift horse film. How horseback riding helps people with disabilities raise self-esteem. I rode horses for 2.5 years. That's where the idea came from. I mean, that's not what made me make the documentary, but that's where I had material in my head, though.
Yeah, and you also really do love it, David. Again, thinking about it as though being legally blind is not a hindrance in order for you to create a huge impact within the world right now. So again, I highly indulge you to check out his website. Again, that's www. Again, that is theblindfilmmaker.com. each and every one of you reviewers. So feel free to check it out, though. Check his documentaries, grab his book. It's available right now on purchase for Amazon and through his website. And also, as you're seeing on the banner that's been scrolling right now, though, I'll also support his GoFundMe page, which is talking about what he was talking about, the brewing possibilities, a cafe for everyone. Let's help support David reach his goal and make sure that we can at least challenge the myths about people who are less able. Okay. So, and also one more thing I want to say though, David, thank you very much for joining us today and also creating a huge difference in the world of literature and also in the world of filmmaking as well. Thank you very much for joining us today, David.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. My thing is just getting my stuff out into the world more. That's been a challenge like you wouldn't believe. Okay.
Yeah, I do understand though, and again, it's really hard right now. But again, you're creating these waves, and even if you try to check it on Google, and if you check all these articles talking about you, you being about a filmmaker, and a lot of stuff has been. There's a lot of good stuff I'm talking about you, David, and it's a proud way of me to say that I'm doing an interview with the David Block. And you know what? To all of our viewers, thank you very much for tuning in. And always remember that every ending is just a new beginning in the world of stories. May your reading adventures be endless and your imagination boundless. And as we say here at Reader's Magnet, we share your stories with the world. Thank you and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.